both sides are trying to divide us. It's not left versus right. It's the super powerful, super wealthy who basically recognize that by having us divided, they can have far greater control and far greater power and money.
We were going to talk about the origin of the elephant meme, the elephant rider meme.
We're not going to do that when Joe's on.
Well, I think it might be interesting because I'm not sure if Joe knows that meme or how what his opinion of the meme is, and I'm curious. I think that would be.
Oh, okay.
Might be interesting.
Can you pull it up?
Well, do you want to start there? You want to go so
I don't know
we have this
I don't know what you're talking about.
So a lot of people talk when people get emotional or triggered. They talk about the elephant, and there's this metaphor that Jonathan Haidt has put forward that the mind is like an elephant and a rider, and the elephant is the unconscious processes in the brain, and the rider is the conscious, logical part of the brain, right? But he chose an elephant and a rider instead of like a horse and a rider because he wants to make it very clear that like when you're riding an elephant, the elephant is very much in control. Okay. You might think that you're directing the elephant, but the elephant is going to go where it wants to go. So he's using this to make the impression that our unconscious emotional and emotional is really not the word. A better word is intuition. Like our intuition about things is really driving our thinking. And then the writer, he even goes as far as saying the writer is even more not like a writer, but more like a press secretary that is just always there to justify whatever the elephant wants to do. So sometimes the rider can direct the elephant, but most of the time it's just the rider, rationalizing why the elephant is here or there or going wherever it's going. So that's the reason why I wanted to talk about this, and we should clip this out, is a lot of people are simplifying this to anybody getting triggered or emotional as, their elephant is rampaging, they say. But I don't think they really make the connection. Like it's more nuance in that. So obviously I see you kind of mulling over your thoughts on this. So I'm assuming you haven't heard it, Joe.
I had not heard that before.
Okay.
But I'll tell you, I think for some people it's an elephant. For others, it's a horse.
Well,
and for others, it's a puppy.
Well, no, let's not change the metaphor, okay?
No, but that's important because what Joe is saying is that he thinks people have control over their elephants.
Sure.
That's why it's a horse, that's why it's a puppy. And I think maybe some people do. I just think it's such a small number of people, and it's never 100% of the time. It's like there's certain topics that people can control their intuitions and their emotions, but
yeah. So does Sam Harris have a puppy, or does he have an elephant?
Well, which way? An elephant, but
which way are you leaning on Sam Harris?
I think it's probably a horse.
No, really? I think Sam Harris is all elephant. I think
interesting.
He's completely being driven by TDS. Like 100%. Yeah. So that's the thing. That's the thing about the analogy. Yes. Obviously, something that's more you are more invested in, you're going to be less apt to move. So let me a little bit more just, and then we'll hopefully we can get a dialogue going on this. So he also says, and this relates to his idea of moral psychology. The first rule of moral psychology is intuitions come first and strategic reasoning second. So he's basically using the elephant rider metaphor to say that our gut intuitions, what the elephant wants, the elephant leans right, we tend to want to go right. The elephant leans left, we want to go left. And our cognitive apparatus comes in after the fact, like a press secretary, to justify those initial intuitions. And I feel that's exactly what's happening with Sam Harris. Sam Harris has this intuition that Trump is the next Hitler. I don't know why he thinks that or where the intuition comes from. And he uses all of his brain power, which I think we all agree Sam Harris is a very smart person, to rationalize this thing that I don't think any of us believe, but he believes. So that's another aspect to it.
which only goes to say, assuming you're correct, which I think in his case it's not an elephant, it's more like, I don't know, triceratops. It's a T-Rex.
In the Trump case, definitely, yes.
Yeah, when it comes to Sam Harris and Trump, it's a T-Rex. So what I would say is, if he's only saying that this is okay, and but further would not be okay because this is what he knows happened. But assuming that we're all correct in this perspective, if he would learn definitively that ballot boxes were stuffed in order to in order to give Biden the win. I'm not saying that because we're on YouTube, and that's definitely not anything claim I'm making or anything like that. All our elections are perfect.
That didn't happen though, right, Joe? We all agree that didn't happen, right?
So if something like that had happened,
right,
and was definitively proven, he would say that was okay, and his brain would find a way to rationalize that action,
right?
And yeah, so we're on the same page as far as that.
So he's completely being driven by the elephant, and the rider is just rationalizing everything. But the thing is, and this is why I feel like this is such a powerful metaphor, because it really, I mean, in my life, it gives me a lot more humility when I'm thinking about these things. I often think, what piece of evidence would convince me that I'm wrong in this situation, because I want to keep that in mind. And I don't necessarily know. Like, I don't know why Sam Harris has had that intuition about Trump. I don't know what it is. He just doesn't like the way he looks, or I don't know. I mean, the Trump University thing. I mean, it's
that was such a weird thing to pick up on.
It's bad, right. But it's like a used car salesman. Bad.
He should have gone with the impeachment thing. The impeachment, the
Victor
1.0. Yeah, that the first time the world ever heard the name Zelensky. So yeah, he should have, and maybe he signed up for Trump University. I don't know. Like, why go there? Why go there? Because as if that's the worst thing anyone ever did.
You're right. I bet
hilarious.
that's it. That's why he's like, fucking, I got scammed by Trump, motherfucker. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, yeah.
So
Sitch, I'll tell you this. This is what bothers me about that analogy. If I could just interject for a second.
Yes,
what bothers
please.
me is I think it invites people to say you're a slave to your intuition, emotion, and your intellect has no
100%
power over
does,
that.
yes.
And that's a terrible.
That's the point.
I think that's perhaps Sam Haidt, as you said, was the guy's
Jonathan Haidt.
Jonathan Haidt.
I think
yeah.
Jonathan Haidt perhaps his reason, his own elephant, is basically pushing to saying, if I say this, in that case, now anyone is justified for basically giving into their base nature at any time. And I think that that's a ridiculous perspective.
Oh,
because
that's
I think
not. Yeah, that's a bad read of Haidt. Haidt backs all this up.
I'm not familiar with Jonathan Haidt. So.
Well, no, but
go ahead,
hold
Sitch.
on. I was going to say, the point of the analogy isn't to justify the behavior. I mean, no one should justify anyone behaving that way. It's just to be like, this is the way that most people act. So you, as an individual, should be aware of it, so that you can try to temper your own elephant.
Yeah,
now,
I think that's how you two take it.
No,
because you're both engaging in critical thought all the time. But we're living in an environment where the world is being trained not to engage in critical thought and trying to be dumbed down as much as possible. So I believe you gentlemen are far more in the exception camp than the vast majority of the world. One of the reasons I come on your show, even though you say some insane stuff sometimes, is because I think you engage in critical thought. And I respect that.
I think.
But the metaphor is immensely helpful for us, for me to do that. Like if I before I understood that this was the way the mind worked, I had a lot of hubris about my logical thinking skills that I don't think were actually accurate to my behavior. And kind of in a Jordan Petersonian way, when you start stepping outside of yourself and kind of watching your behavior as an impartial observer, you start noticing, oh yeah, I am driven a lot with my intuition. And I think a lot of people go their entire lives and never even think, what piece of evidence would convince me this was wrong? Like they can't even confront that question.
Mm-hmm. I think it's important to distinguish also perhaps between intuition and appetite. Between because to me, intuition my take on intuition, I don't think there's such a thing as, I think gut instinct is a very, very, it's a learned thing. We tend to see someone give an expression, and we draw a certain immediate reaction to it, and
Mhm.
even someone we never met before, and it's because at some point in our life we probably aren't cognizant of where, but buried, etched in your brain somewhere, that look someone gave you reminds you of someone else who gave you that same look, and you had a
Right.
positive or negative
Sure.
experience with it.
Sure.
And now your gut is telling you this is terrible or this is great or anywhere in between. And that's what I think gut instinct is. So I'm a very big believer in trusting what your gut reaction is when you're trying to assess a situation or individuals, because that it's not just nothing, that's experience. It's a subconscious experience that's talking to you. So that I'm more okay with people sort of, allowing that to be their elephant, so to speak, than it's just like, well, I have a real appetite for money or sex or anything else or drugs, and therefore I'm a slave to that hunger, and therefore, I what am I supposed to do? I'm just a rider on this elephant or T-Rex.
Well,
You
you do describe it correctly. The gut intuition, the gut instinct, all that stuff is the elephant. Yeah. So we're definitely talking about the same thing.
Right. Well, there's one other element is that the reason Haidt uses the word intuition is because he believes that humans basically have 5 or 6 or possibly 7 moral foundations that basically you could, in the way that he does it, he kind of breaks up like there's these various moral foundations that people have. And if you measure it, you'll find that like people on the right tend to be activated by certain moral foundations like, dignity. And what are the 3 that the conservatives are activated by, Adam? It's fairness, cheating,
Fairness, cheating, liberty,
order,
oppression.
subjugation.
Yeah, fairness. Oh, I said fairness, cheating. I'm not
Right.
sure. Who cares?
Well, whatever. There's various things that trigger the rights.
Loyalty, betrayal. That's the
Loyalty,
big one
betrayal.
for it,
Yeah. There's various things that trigger the right's morality, but it doesn't really trigger the left's morality at all. And there's various things that trigger the left's morality that don't necessarily trigger the right's morality.
like
And
what?
so,
what are the ones that trigger the left's morality?
so
Here, I'll
so
look it up.
Bring up the chart.
Yeah.
So the main thing that triggers the left is care harm. They're almost entirely fixated around care harm. In this care harm foundation, that that there's are you creating harm on other people? We have to make sure that you're not harming anyone. That's like the main thing that the left is being bothered by, and the left doesn't really care about loyalty, really at all, which maybe explains a lot. and it's kind of why when you see like
this is why you two fight so quickly. So there you go.
Well, there you go. But
we do. No, I think we do have a strong loyalty foundation. Obviously, right. I know I do. I very do. So it's care, harm, fairness, cheating, loyalty, betrayal, authority, subversion, sanctity, degradation, and liberty, oppression.
Right.
So
yeah,
like
all of these,
like
the left doesn't care about sanctity, degradation at all.
Right.
Like even remotely. And so that's why you'll have you look at campaign ads for the left and the right, and they're just so different. It's because they're triggering completely different moral foundations, and they're triggering completely different things. And that's why often, if someone's on the right is trying to convince someone on the left, it's like they're talking to a wall, and then the vice versa is true. Someone on the left trying to convince someone on the right, they're talking to a wall because both people are trying to convince the other side using the moral foundations that work for them, not realizing that the other person is not persuaded by these talking points at all.
So is me saying, how can you possibly think this is fair? And the person on the left saying, don't you care about what's going to happen though? Like, don't you care about the impact that's going to have on people if you're going to be so strict?
Fairness, cheating is interesting because there's a lot of overlap between left and right. And this was actually one of the reasons that I thought Trump was going to win the election, because I thought Trump always frames everything in terms of fairness, cheating, which is very smart because it does tend to appeal to the widest, broadest swath of people. If there's a conflict between fairness, cheating, the left will default to care harm, which the right doesn't necessarily default to care harm. They default to authority, subversion, liberty, oppression, loyalty, betrayal. They default to one of the other things. But the left is just completely obsessed with care harm, which I'm pretty sure you have seen that and agree with that. The authority subversion is difficult because the left doesn't even respect authority at all. Like they fucking hate authority. So
well, I think that's changed a lot as far as the subjecting ourselves to authority.
Oh yeah,
largely,
true.
largely because a lot of people on the right don't trust the authority. I mean, they've really damaged their own integrity.
Right.
I if you asked me 15 years ago, I would swear by the police and our government, our institutions, and I don't know if it's, and I definitely have moved far away from that, where I'm like, I think our institutions are corrupt. I think that if you ask me to like name 5 politicians who I think really mean it, like mean the things they say, I would struggle to come up with more than 2 or 3. And that are not all about the power. At the end of the day, money and power are going to be a motivating factor for everyone. We understand that, but that if they have any belief, any real belief in it, or they just preaching to their choir. But you when you say fairness and cheating are what the one overlap that we have, perhaps that explains the public at large's unanimous reaction to the Depp trial. Because I think that I was so shocked to see how many people on the left were willing to like basically come over and recognize that Amber Heard is just a psychopath, and it was, to me, it was very heartwarming. It was very inspirational to think to myself, you know what? Well, I'm not as different from half the country as I thought I was 2 months ago. I think that,
That's nice.
we're a lot more similar and I've changed the messaging on my show as a result of this. I have a much more diverse audience now, and my audience, and I know that I have some people who despise Trump in my audience, which I didn't have 10 of those before the Depp trial, and my objective has been to sort of help bridge this gap so that people can understand that this is my thinking. I'm not going to hide who I am. I'm not going to try and sell it somewhere else, but I try and express it in a way that rather than making it more rah-rah cheerleader, but it's more a matter of like, look, this is why I came here. And if you disagree with me on any topic at all, I'm fine with hearing your position, and we'll have this dialogue back and forth, and I'll have that with my audience, and I'll have it sort of like the kind of conversations I have with you, because it's an opportunity, because I realize it's not half the country. That's what the media wants us to believe, that the other half is evil. Whether you're following the right side, you're following Fox, which is not really that right anymore, but you're following Fox and you're following Newsmax or OAN, or if you're on the left following MSNBC and CNN and everyone. So you're basically trained to think that the other half of the country are either evil or idiots.
Yeah, that's all elephant right there.
Yeah,
that's all intuition. Yeah,
yes, it's
totally.
It's playing to the elephant, and you're good. You're one of the good ones. Stay with us. Stay with one of the good. Stay with us, the good ones. Don't go over to the dark side. And what I came to appreciate is both sides are trying to divide us. It's not left versus right. It's the super powerful, super wealthy who basically recognize that by having us divided, they can have far greater control and far greater power and money. And that doesn't mean I'm out for a witch hunt. I'm not going to be sitting there as Occupy, the next Occupy Wall Street, trying to take down the 1%. But I think that we need to recognize where we are being triggered into being divisive, rather than we actually having as great differences as are being projected by the public. I'm doing the whole monologue thing you didn't want me to.
Sitch, okay. Do you have any final thoughts on Elephant Rider?
I think, well, not on that specifically, but I think it's important to point out that Joe has just laid out that Amber Heard, being a horrible, abusive piece of shit to Johnny Depp, has saved the country from civil war.
Yes.
So thank you so much,
Johnny.
Amber Heard.
Thank you for suffering under her boot, Johnny.
Yes. Johnny Depp was the hero, the sacrifice we needed. Johnny Depp suffered for us. So thank you, Johnny Depp.
Bless you, Johnny Depp. Hi, you just listened to a clip from the Sitch and Adams show. If you like what you heard, you can listen to our live show right here on this channel on Sunday, starting at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And if you want, you can super chat us. We read $20 and up super chats on the show, and then do a follow-up stream on the following Tuesday where we read the rest of the unread super chats and interact with fans of the show. Subscribe to this channel right here to listen to the live show or to listen to more of our awesome clips.